Hey guys, it's Salads and Bolts, and welcome back to another Two Blue Vortex chapter analysis video. This time we're going through Two Blue Vortex chapter 2 for all the Japanese nuances that were missed out on and a few other key details that I felt should be elaborated on a little bit more. That's going to take me about 12 minutes to read through this. The cover. The words behind Sarada say, Kyoku no nakade. My translation of that is, in memory of, or in my memories. I'm honestly not sure what this has to do with the chapter itself. The words on the cover always have something to do with the chapter, and honestly the only thing I can think of is Sarada shoving her memories with Boruto behind the brick wall in the background, which is symbolic because of her chapter 25 or 21 cover. Can't remember which one it is. I think it's 21. Or the memories being the dark black splotches seeping through the bricks. Which, if you have any thoughts about that, feel free to discuss with me in the comments. I actually turned them on for this on my blog posts as well, so you can go comment directly there if you would like. The chapter of the title is Ki, or Tree. Fonts and tones. I love their exchange. Boruto is still pissed off. Code is so full of himself. Code is the classy Vegeta of Boruto, except he uses boku instead of ore. So if you don't know, kono boku-sama is like... Boku is like a more little kiddish version of the way to say I for a male. And ore is a little bit more like masculine, but Vegeta always calls himself kono ore-sama, which is like very, very haughty, but because Code is using boku, it feels almost comedic the way he's calling himself kono boku-sama. Anyway, once again I'll do a quick retranslation of this section here. I've been looking for you, Boruto. For you to show yourself so readily, however, was quite unexpected. If I'd have known it was this easy, I would have come to Konoha much sooner. Withdraw your monsters, all of them. Do it while you still have control, and I'll let you live. Ha! Surely you jest. What did you say just now? Let me live? You? When you ran away like a coward with your tail between your legs 2 years ago, unable to lay a single finger on the great and powerful me? I must have misheard you. You heard me loud and clear. Get to it. If you refuse, this time it'll hurt more than just your left eye. Well, well, well. To think you learned how to bluff. Your attempts are quite laughable, really. Once again, when I translate this, it's not 100% literal. It's about the tone, the nuance. I'm shoving all that back in. If you want to know more about that kind of translation, check out my About page for a good commentary on me translating the sentence from English. Hun, how many times have I told you not to eat off the doggone floor? Into Japanese, and back into English again. Same concept applies here. Also, let me talk about what's going on with the fonts. This line of codes, when you ran away like a coward with your tail in between your legs 2 years ago, unable to lay a single finger on the great and powerful me, I must have misheard you, has emphasis dots. If you don't know, in Japanese, next to the text sometimes there'll be little dots for emphasis. It's not really bold, but it's like, pay attention to this here. Then Boruto's next line. You heard me loud and clear. Get to it. If you refuse, this time I'll hurt more than just your left eye, is bold. And finally, Code's response. Well, well, well. To think you learned how to bluff. Your attempts are quite laughable, really. As in a different, fancier, slightly enlarged font. The situation escalates even in the text itself. Sarada's Boruto, right after that, is the same kind of pretty font, but it's softened just a little bit, so it's not as striking. But anyways, on top of some tonality things, the font in Japanese can also be used to showcase the escalating situation, which usually isn't changed in the English chapters, so I figured I'd point it out. Stay alive. Everyone always wants to know if there's a little something more between Boruto and Sarada's conversations, at least in my DMs, so I'll give you a breakdown of exactly what was said and if it has any significance. Boruto, Sarada, 逃げ遅れた人たちがまだ大勢いる。お前が措置を頼む。ここは俺に任せろ。Sarada, there's still a lot of people that haven't gotten to safety yet. I'll leave those guys to you. Let me handle things here. あんた、大丈夫なの? Are you okay? 話は後だ。まずは生き残れ。We'll talk later. Until then, stay alive. Now for the breakdown. Sarada starts by saying his name, and Boruto responds with hers. That might not mean much, but it does have a little significance. If Boruto was brushing her off as a stone-hearted emo boy that everyone says he is, he wouldn't have responded with her name. He would have just given her orders and told her to go carry them out. Instead, you see him take a pause, explain things, even in the hurry that he's in. The word tanomu means to leave or entrust to someone, or count on them for something. In this case, a task, taking care of the people who haven't gotten away yet. And makasero means the opposite party can count on the speaker, or you can count on me to do blank. So Boruto's saying he'll handle Code. These two words in tandem go to show the trusting relationship he still has with her as his teammate despite not seeing her for 3 years. They're already right back to how they were, and currently, she is the only active ninja he could say those words to. The brief, "Daijoubu nano?" is a bit startled. I mean, the dude came flying out of nowhere, and it's also concerned, which is pretty obvious from the English, but it's almost like, dude, it's been 3 years, the heck, have you been okay all this time? And finally, "Hanashi wa ato da, mazu wa ikinokore," is quite literally, we've got to save the talk for later, or I'll talk with you later. Mazu wa is actually like first, but it doesn't flow well in English, so he's saying, first, you've got to stay alive, parentheses, until then. Ikinokore is actually like the harsher ordering form of stay alive, so it's not just a soft stay alive, it's like a dead serious, you might die if you don't take this seriously, live, with everything you've got, keep yourself alive. And that's that. Their conversation, while short, does have subtle undertones of sincerity and concern and care. To add another side note, I think it's important that we didn't see Boruto's facial expressions or reactions to Sarada's voice at all. He definitely wasn't ready to face her yet, considering everything that happened. But we'll get to that explanation in Chapter 5's review. Himawari's first battle. Himawari was complimented last chapter for her developing skills as a ninja, but this may perhaps be the first time she's seeing Shikadai and Chocho's teamwork against a strong opponent. Shikadai holds 3 clawgrams down, Chocho punches 1, and Himawari from atop Inujin's bird remarks, "Sugoi!" or "Wow!" as she stares on in amazement. Without being an official genin, I don't think she can go on missions. I don't think she has kunai or shuriken either. She was likely training with them in her spare time before this to try and get stronger. Inujin also has her up on his bird, not down with the fighting, and he's pretty protective over her. I assume before this, she probably tagged along to observe, but didn't participate in any of the actual fighting. While she does gain a certain power later, in these beginning chapters, it's clear that Himawari doesn't quite seem to be at genin level yet. She also, when she jumps off the bird, Inujin goes immediately to break her fall, but usually ninja would be able to jump from that high without having any issue. That was another reason that I guess I didn't write. Big brother Kawaki. Himawari casually calls Kawaki Oni-chan or Big Brother, and his response. Before I break down his wording, even from Chapter 1, Kawaki flew in, yelling at Inoshikacho to move out of the way in big bold font, bigger than Himawari and Inujin's, and immediately smacked that claw grime out of the way. He was probably on standby somewhere, saw her fall, and flew in to save her, and he was pretty adamant about getting to her in time as well. But Inujin scooped her up, so he dealt with the claw grime, is kind of how I saw it. Then, when Himawari tries to thank her big brother, his response is, "Yamero tsutendaro sono yobikata ga. Nandomo ie wa kandaro teme wa." How many times do I gotta frickin' tell you before you understand? Quit calling me that word I can't say. Putting the tone back into his language. How I hate reading the translations for free on some website, and then seeing the Japanese or watching the anime only to realize, dear gosh, that's what they sound like? It's always a shock when I finally hear their actual personality. The most recent example of that was Dandadan. Momo felt completely different in Japanese for me. Anyway, in Japan, popular manga is not usually free online. You get the first 3 to 10 chapters on most sites and apps, and then it's a pay-per-chapter thing. So if you want to read the Japanese chapters of something that isn't currently releasing, I've got to go to the store and buy it for $1 to $3 a volume, if I can find all the volumes at my local secondhand bookstore. Pirated sites are extremely rare in Japanese and get taken down very quickly. So yes, because I can read English, if I'm curious about a story but don't want to leave the comfort of my home to pay for someone else's used copy, I'll just read it in English for free. And if I really like it, I'll actually search out the series and buy it. But usually it's just me being bored and looking for a quick story to binge or a recommendation from a friend that I want to get a preview of before letting it take up space on my very limited bookshelf space. Kawaki's speech in general is always harsh. Littered with katakana, harshest forms of all the verbs, constantly using teme or omae instead of other people's names, shortening things and stringing them together. He's an orphan who was raised around a drunk, abusive dad, so it makes sense that his speech matches what would have been used in that environment. Jigen was slightly different, but he was constantly rebelling against Jigen, so he would have kept the rough speech. To explain, yamero, stop. Tsutendaro, short for teitendaro, I've said it before, haven't I? Sono yobikata ga, that way of calling me. Nando, how many times, plus omitted particle. iya, short for ieba. I've said wakandaro, short for wakaru no daro. Don't you understand? Teme wa harsher form of you out of normal sentence order. Either way, this sentence is pretty harsh, shortened, and a little strung together. You could easily start a fight with this in real life. If you said this to your classmate, they might back away slowly. It's not just, hey, don't call me that. It's laced with pain and anger and rejection of any resemblance of acceptance, which is Kawaki's character. Which is why in math they don't make more of an effort to translate his words that way, when that's quite literally what they are. But nope, we can't use curse words, even though so many times they're warranted and add to the character tone and what they're actually saying and how harshly they're saying it. We aren't family-friendly on this blog. Kawaki has chosen to reject all forms of love and bonds, and that's shown time over time again, especially through his speech. This scene is no exception, but even though Kawaki's words are harsh, his actions still show that he cares. Genin versus Jonin, turning into trees. In this scene where Sarada is running with a flock of Jonin behind her, and she does all the work to subdue the claw grimes, they remark, "Whoa, are you really a Genin?" And she's like, "Yeah, and?" There's something about seniority here that's kind of at play that gets missed in the English. Soagi, the Jonin that ends up as a tree, is much older than Sarada and a higher rank. Despite that, Sarada is doing the majority of the fighting. A claw grime comes up behind her. Soagi shouts her last name. Uchiha, with no honorifics, jumps in the way. Sarada shouts, "Soagi-san," using a respectful title, and then he becomes a tree. Protecting the younger generation to carve a path for them has kind of been another prominent theme in Boruto, and hierarchical relationships have a lot more weight in Japan than they do in the West. This scene felt, to me at least, like a callback to that theme. In a sense, it was doing a little more than showing that people turn into trees with bitten, which is all it felt like in English when I read it. Protecting the younger generation to carve a path for them is a prominent theme in Boruto, but it's also a prominent theme in Japan. I feel like I explained this in another one of my chapter analysis with Dr. Stone, and the other example being the nuclear power plant that was going to explode and had a lot of radiation, so they sent in a team of older retired engineers because they were originally going to send in like just random volunteers, but this one guy was like, "No, I'm going to start an initiative to gather retired engineers to do this so that none of the young people's lives get damaged, because by the time we start feeling the effects of like the radiation and all that kind of stuff, several years down the road, we'll already be old enough that our lives will basically be over anyway. No need to like sacrifice these young people." So this kind of little things end up happening a lot. Not necessarily a lot, but like I feel like that's a much stronger moral in Japan than it is in the West. Anyway, the true horror of Ten Tails and Code's and Boruto's dialogue. Boruto says that Code changed the claw grimes, not enhanced them. The word in Japanese there is henka o kuaeta, which means like altering the existing form. He modified them. Those are two completely different words. Also, gosh, why is the dialogue just so wrong here? Boruto, I'll let you live, so in turn guide me to where the Ten Tails is. Then Code responds with, "Tachiba o wakemaete mono o ie yo, Boruto. Zako wa zakurashiku na." The official says, "Give me a break, Boruto. Have you lost your mind?" But what it's actually saying is, "Be mindful of your place below me when you speak, Boruto. Conduct yourself properly, like the weakling you are." It's not that big of a deal, but it just ruins his haughty, full of himself tone. The tone! It's always just gone. From characters who are eccentric or harsh especially, they just remove all that. Meanwhile, Boruto's response is, "I'm gonna give it to you straight. Killing you is easy. Instead of throwing your life away, you should really try being useful to the world for once." Code responds with, "Talking with you is pointless. You shall be the one to die." Boruto responds with, "There's no cure for idiocy, huh?" I actually liked this line. The last line there is literally, "There's no medicine that'll work as a cure for an idiot," but I liked the official's translation. After being told to know his place and speak thusly to Code, Boruto was literally like, "No, I'm good. Instead of dying, I'll offer you a chance. You don't want it? Alright. Uzuhiko." Once again, Code is full of himself and Boruto isn't putting up with his clown act. And all in all, I really enjoyed this chapter. Not quite as many little things as chapter 1, but that's to be expected. It really makes me happy to see people enjoying these reviews as well. I didn't think that many people would have the patience to read stuff like this on top of already reading the chapters, but it makes my day whenever someone is like, "Ah yes, thank you for the thick translation," or "Oh, I remember when you said this thing about this chapter." So thank you for your time, and I wish you a good day or night, wherever in the world you may live. Until next chapter.